As always, a huge thank you to Starboard, who are once again this season's main sponsors. Starboard has a history of innovation across water sports, starting in 1994 by revolutionising the design of windsurf boards, and they've brought that bang up to date recently, bringing foil windsurfing onto the Olympic stage with their IQ foil package. Starboard got behind stand-up paddleboarding in a huge way in the early days and continue to lead the industry to reduce their environmental impact. Their focus on innovation brought them 7 world champions at the ICF Worlds last year, and all of them were using their Lima paddle range. They continue to improve and innovate their boards and their paddles for all abilities across all flavours of the sport, including adventure. And you can find out more about Starboard through their website, which is linked to in the show notes. Welcome to SUPfm, the sport's leading podcast, where we speak to inspiring people from the fastest growing water sport in the world. Our aim is to help you maximise your own experiences of stand-up paddleboarding and to deepen your love of the water as we chat with people from both inside and outside the SUP world. Every episode is designed to inspire, support and provide you with a deeper immersion through my conversations with leading athletes, scientists, adventurers, TED speakers, and New York Times best-selling authors. If you like what we do, there are plenty of ways to support the podcast, including telling your friends, following us on social media. You can even buy me a coffee on Patreon, or you could leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, which will help others to find us. Whatever you can do, we appreciate it. This episode is part of our Yukon 1000 mini-season, where we do a deep dive over several episodes into the ultimate adventure race challenge and the longest paddle race on the planet, where we'll talk to the race organisers, teams and individual paddlers in the lead up, in the start town just ahead of the race and after the finishing line, closely following what many describe as a truly epic odyssey of a race.
Welcome to the Yukon 1000, the world's longest paddle race.
Could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, Craig Sawyer, and I'm competing in this year's Yukon 1000 alongside my paddle partner and good friend, Skip Innes from the Surrey Hills Adventure Club, or the Shac, as many of you will know it as.
So this gives me a chance to back up a bit and explain how this mini-season all about the Yukon 1000 started. Craig's been someone I've been aware of, together with Skip, as fixtures in the UK SUP scene for many years, doing lots of interesting stuff. But I met him face-to-face for the first time at Brendan Prince's SUP 12, which I was co-presenting. And we had a chat, we got on, and we were talking about Yukon 1000. And that's where the idea for this season first came about, because it's a pretty special race that's always fascinated me, because it's in a true wilderness, it's a true test. And without getting too romantic about it, it's a proper physical and mental odyssey that really changes people. But before we got into any of the deep stuff, I asked Craig about his other role. Okay, so not only are you taking part in the Yukon 1000 this year, but you're also wearing another hat because you're also doing media coverage of the race. Just tell us about that and what you've got planned this year.
Yeah, so it's an interesting one. My background, as well as obviously SUP racing and paddling and the fitness side, is I have a production company, a film production agency, which I've run for the last 15 years. So I've always been into content creation and content production, more so around corporate on a day-to-day basis. But any opportunity to do it around the sport or adventure, I like to snap up. And I've been quite involved with the Yukon 1000 for the last 3 or 4 years, since being accepted back in August 2019. And last year, while spending time out in Alaska with John and the rest of the team from Yukon 1000, I was doing some filming, to be honest, just for myself on the side. Skip and I made it to the finish of the race, and we filmed every team coming in. And I kind of put together a little edit as a thank you to John, the team, and it kind of like spiraled from there, really. It's transpired that John had been approached quite a few times by different agencies looking to make a documentary on the race. And up until last year, the people approaching John they wanted to have boats on the water, helicopters in the sky, and the whole thing about the race is once you leave Whitehorse, you are on your own. The teams, you are on your own. There's no support. There's no fallback. And John, as I understand it, had always just been hesitant to have the like Netflix-esque teams zooming up and down rivers with helicopters, just basically ruining it for the races. He didn't want any of the filming to impact the experience the races would have. And we actually started chatting about it actually while sitting on the beach at the finish line at Dalton Highway in Alaska. And John kind of floated the idea around perhaps maybe I would like to looking at doing a Yukon documentary. He was fully aware that every year more content's being produced by teams. At some point, in the past, there wasn't much content, but as we know, with cameras and kit these days, after every race now, there's more and more out there. And it just seemed a right time to do something official, to kind of control the narrative is probably the wrong way, but just to strike while they're on top, where there's a lot of interest in the race, where we have the opportunity to do something that no one's done. So, a few calls after the race, September, October time, we agreed to join John the team and take on producing the official Yukon 1000 documentary.
That's so exciting. And from someone on the water as well. So how is that structured then? Because obviously no helicopters, no boats on the water. You'll be filming from your boat. How are you getting the other coverage?
So that's an interesting one. So the way we've looked at the documentary is not making it about a particular year. So this is not the 2023 Yukon 1000 documentary. This is a documentary that celebrates the race, its heritage, where it started, the roots, some of the original teams. I've read stories that back in 2009 there wasn't a cutoff, for example. There wasn't a 10-day cutoff, and sometimes the organisers would be waiting at the finish line for 3-4 weeks for the last team to come meandering across the finish line. And the more we looked into it, the more these really fascinating, interesting stories into the people that have done the race previously, their backgrounds, the parts of the world they come from, the experience they had, and the experiences they had while racing. So we are looking at it as an opportunity to celebrate the race since its inception. So that involves interviewing the original Yukon 1000 owner who started it, Peter Coates. We're going to be interviewing with him in Whitehorse in the week before the race. Previous racers we've been speaking to around the world, getting their footage and photos, finding out their stories, finding story strands, all at the same time as keeping up to date with the teams for the 2023 race, so we can start getting to do some pre-filming of their training and their preparation. There's a lot of work going on before the race starts, both in collating hours of content in hundreds of formats and varying qualities you can imagine, trying to pick out story strands and things that would be interesting. And also, these elements will obviously be quite polished. We have control over those to a certain degree. Obviously, I can't be flying around the world, unfortunately, filming with the team from New Zealand and the team from Alberta. And then, so there's a kind of leaning on favours and friends and contacts they may have as well. But we're kind of collating this content. And then, but obviously, I think as Pete Coates put it so eloquently when I was talking to him on email, and I asked him, could you send me any footage and photos you've got from the years when you were running it? And he said, I have a look, but people leave and then people arrive, and that for him is an organizer. He waves them off at Whitehorse, or the race leaves Whitehorse, it arrives at Dalton Highway Bridge, and 1,000 miles of stuff happens that only the teams will know. So I thought it was a really nice way of putting it. So obviously we're now going to be leaning very much heavily on user generated content and the content created by the teams that are out there racing. So what does that look like? Well, it's a case of helping the teams understand what angles look good, good places to mount a GoPro on a canoe, film landscape, not portrait, please. Film the bad times as well as the good, when you're at your lowest, and probably the last thing you want to be doing is pulling out a camera and sticking it in your mate's face. But do it because they're the special moments. If I look at the footage I'm getting sent from last year's races, the stuff that really is emotion, has that emotive tug and things like that, is the highs and the lows. The seeing someone almost in tears in a tent, talking about their day, really brings home what the race is about and what they've gone through that day. So yeah, there's an element of historic asset management of stuff, ranging from photos to videos to all the archival stuff. There's the stuff I shot last year in the times I was over there, and then there's the stuff we as my team can create and capture. So spending a week in Whitehorse before the race, interviewing the teams for 2023, and then just everyone leaves the beach in Whitehorse, and then at the end we see what we get. I think there is like 2 or 3 spots where the road gets near to the river, so we're trying to plan to have someone to be able to get some shots coming through Five Fingers, Dawson, the halfway cutoff. But it's certainly not going to involve boats on the water, helicopters in the sky. It's 99. Once you leave Whitehorse, we're going to get to see it from the eyes of the racers. So one of the other really important things to us and the organisers when it comes to putting this documentary together is also focusing on climate change and how it's affecting the river and the people and the towns and the communities that it goes through. The last 2 years, they've had a once in 100-year flood, 2 years running. That's having a huge impact on the river and the people and the livelihoods of the people. So we're hoping we want to do it with absolute utmost respect as well to the First Nations people along the river. So we're consulting with them, getting them to kind of support us and supply stuff. I've been speaking to hydrologists in Dawson about the river and what it's doing and why it's doing what it's doing, and they can kind of estimate what the river might do in July based on how the snowfall is in December and where it's falling as well. So it's really interesting stuff. So I think it's threading in that element as well to show that there's so much that goes into paddling 1,000 miles down the Yukon, from its people, the river, the climate, and the crazy people that
who do
decide to take it on.
And just on that subject, climate change, as you said, as we speak, I think there were some villages that were flooded. The Yukon broke its banks, and last year as well there were wildfires as well, which luckily didn't affect things too much. You must have come across them.
Absolutely. The 2 elements. The river breaking up is quite incredible to see. We're still trying to source some great video clips. Actually, there's clips online as it breaks up, but the noise it makes, the volume of water that over the winter is just frozen solid into a motorway of ice and snow. When it starts moving and you start to see it hit the sheer power, which is incredible. And so I've lost my strand there. So there's the river moving. Wildfires, So it's incredible seeing the river in the winter, and in the summer, wildfires are a massive thing. They have to, most of them just get left to burn out. Again, some of the footage of the races across the years, the sky is black with a slight little orange ball, which is the sun. It's the reason why some of the kit list includes things like industrial grade smoke masks and swimming goggles. You've got that there's the wildfires raging and blowing across the river. You can't see anything. And in fact, this year, in 2023, there's effectively, if you think of the Yukon River flying up into Alaska, there's a road, the 2 roads that I call them roads, but they're more just dust tracks, and they go either side at quite a distance, and halfway up one of them, it was just closed because there's a wildfire, couldn't get through. So, 800-mile detour back around the other side, or sometimes you can follow a fire truck through. They'll lead the way, so you just follow the blue flashing lights. But the wildfires are crazy. You see it hanging in the air. In Fairbanks at the finish line, it was very hard to get hotel rooms in Fairbanks City before flying home because they were full with firefighters coming in from around the country to fight the wildfires that are kind of nearer to any settlements as well. So yeah, it's daunting and scary. Mother Nature at its strongest, but yeah, it's fascinating to see.
We'd like to thank Baltic Life Jackets for returning as episode sponsors this season. Baltic designed and developed their SUP Elite PFDs to solve two key problems facing stand-up paddlers. The slimmed-down front panel makes it easier to climb back on your board, and the ergonomic cutaways around the arms accommodate the SUP stroke, allowing you to paddle freely without restriction to the point that you hardly notice you're even wearing it. The SUP Elite also incorporates storage and the option to add a hydration pack, which is perfect for the summer. So check out the SUP Elite and the SUP Pro PFDs at your local stockist or at supfmpodcast.com/Baltic. Looking to take your performance to the next level? Then look no further than Ocean Pacific. Introducing the Strike Series VRX, the ultimate SUP paddle designed for maximum power and efficiency. Its firm flex shaft optimizes energy transfer for efficient paddling. Its double dihedral blade ensures an unrivaled grip on the water, boosting your surfing, racing and touring performance. Ocean Pacific sponsors and promotes UK surf and race culture, supporting athletes and adventure racing teams, including the Shac team competing in this year's Yukon 1000. And they're committed to providing professional grade equipment at an accessible price. Visit oceanpacific.com today to explore their range of high performance paddles, hardware and apparel. And the links to all of our sponsors are in the show notes. So tell me a bit about 2019 to 2023 then, because you've been on an epic journey just to get to the start line, haven't you?
Yeah, it's kind of, this feels like this. Dare I say, this feels like longer than the 1,000-mile actual race is going to feel. So we applied back in August 2019. We were looking for something to do, so a race to do. Had never heard of the Yukon or the race itself. We're doing some Googling, and after a couple of beers, one thing led to another. We found the Yukon River Quest website. Thought, this is interesting. This looks great. It's 715 kilometers up to this place called Dawson on this cool looking river, and then there was something in the copy that said it was something like the second longest canoe, kayak, and paddleboard race in the world. And then it was like, oh, God, blimey! I didn't know. That's the second. What's the longest? And then, you Google longest canoe race in the world, and the Yukon 1000 come up. And we had a look at it. We put our applications in, and I'll be honest, kind of didn't think anything of it. We didn't necessarily have the pedigree or experience at the time to do the race. We filled the application form in very, very honestly. The vetting process we knew would be strict. We thought, well, put it in, see what happens. And then we had a few questions back and forth, and then we got confirmation. It was August 2019 that we were accepted. At the time, I think there was only 3 other paddleboard teams had done it in previous years. And there was a period of probably a month of like, blimey, do we actually really want to do this? It's a story I've told many people, but we'd go out and do training paddles and cramp up after an hour and a half, 2 hours, and I still look at photos and videos of us in the September, October of 2019, and I'm like, look at myself and I'm like, what am I wearing? I'm like, it's like you had no idea. If I could tell myself back then, like, you have no idea what you're doing, which is incredible, really, because I think it just shows that half the thing is going for these things, and it's incredibly we're far more capable than we probably think if we chuck ourselves into something. So 2019 comes in 2019, 2020. Training's ramping up. We're starting to get distances. What we learned in that period of time was incredible. Really focused. I'm not going to dwell on what happened. We all know what happened in March 2020. Understandably, it meant that the 2020 race was cancelled. So we had a summer of sunshine and paddling in the UK. And then again, 2021, it was on the cards towards the end of 2020, but really everyone knew that, international travel was still, tough enough into normal places, but the remote places. So 2021 was then cancelled again because of COVID. And then we got to 2022. What's quite interesting, I guess, over that period of time, we still continued to train, work on our kit. So actually, being a filmmaker, I've documented everything ourselves as well. So, I can see the evolution of our training, our equipment, what we were going to take, what we thought we needed, which we no longer needed. as we found new things and discovered stuff. So kind of like we kept thinking, we didn't park it each year and not look at it. But that was also quite mentally tough as well, because you're almost always on the, are we going? No, we're not. So that was tough. Come around to 2022, everything looked good. Headed out to Whitehorse about 7-8 days before the race to kind of acclimatise and buy the last bits of stuff that you can't take on the plane, like bear spray and gas canisters and bits and pieces. And so about a day in Whitehorse after we landed, I just felt so tired. My arms and legs were so heavy, and we put it down with it's just fatigue. It's the stress of traveling. It's not too. It's a long way to travel over to Canada and a small plane up into Whitehorse, but it's okay. But it's still jet lag and obviously the stress of the race, what you're building up to. And when you get to Whitehorse, particularly, I think everyone will have their own experience, but we've been looking at this place for nearly 3.5 years online, and it almost felt like we knew the place before we'd even got there. But then when you first see the river, and particularly because of the high water, and you see how fast it was moving, and so there was a lot of kind of mental stuff going on as well. So I felt so tired and fatigued, but I put it down to the stress of traveling and the anticipation and of the race itself. But as the days went on, I was just feeling worse and worse. And one night, Skip and I was like, look, maybe I was too stressed. Maybe we should go out for a beer, have a burger, just try and chill out, And this was like 2 or 3 days before. We went out for a burger and a beer, and that was nice. But that evening, back in the hotel room, I just had the sweats and shivers all night long. I didn't sleep a single second. I don't think I've ever been felt so cold in my life. I was wrapped up in all the kit we had taken, all our emergency stuff. I was, in the morning, I was like, look, at this point, I still know what it was, but I knew I was ill, So went for a walk into some fresh air, picked up, and I thought, went past a pharmacy. We had the good thing about this race is, we went with bags of drugs. we had painkillers for everything. So I didn't need any of that stuff, but I just grabbed I don't know why, I didn't even think about it. I just grabbed a COVID test from the pharmacy, went back to the hotel room, thought it's not COVID, it's fine, but I might as well just put that out of the mind. Did a COVID test, and actually at the time it come up with one line. I thought, let's see, there we go, I'm fine. I need some rest. Skip like that. I'm gonna go out for the day. I'll leave you to the hotel room and get some rest. I went back to bed for maybe an hour or so. Got up to go to the loo and walked past the test which I'd done, and there was 2 lines. Did another test, and then there's 2 lines that come up really quickly. So at that point, obviously things escalated very well. I say escalated, but very quickly it became apparent that why I was feeling as I was because of I've picked up COVID. Never had it before, never had it since. In my line of work over COVID, I was traveling. I was one of, I say lucky people, but because of my work, I do a lot of travel filmmaking as well. I traveled during lockdown officially, as with permissions. I took precautions, but just got on with life, and that's what it was. And it was a tough decision, but also easy decision. In as much as you're going into places, once you leave Whitehorse, you're going to places where they haven't even had COVID. These are tiny communities. If we needed help, I'm not. And likewise, Skip. We've been traveling together, sharing hotel rooms. If he developed it 2 or 3 days later when we're down the river, and he felt as bad as I did when I was in a nice, warm, nice hotel room. So whilst it was the hardest thing to do, it was definitely, I stand by, the right thing to do. So I had to self-isolate. So that was our 2022 race finished with. But some things happen for a reason.
Well, absolutely. And but it must have been so phenomenally disappointing after all of those years. How was Skip? I mean, it sounds like he's quite a phlegmatic character. He's takes it all in his stride.
Well, I think that's the hardest. because for me, it was, I was the one that got it. I'm ill. I can't do it. It sucks. It's horrible. And everyone's, all the family support at home, to be honest, is like, oh my God, Craig, parents are messaging you, friends messaging you. Skip's being, supportive. He's gutted for me, but I think there's a lot to be said about that, what he was going through, because he was ready. He wasn't ill. He was the one, went and got another hotel room, but like was seeing the teams getting ready for to leave the next day, was at the briefing that we should have been at. And I'll never forget that. I mean, like it's unsung hero. It's not even a hero thing. It's just like, I just don't think you can probably appreciate what he would have had to have gone through. And we're great friends, so I kind of knew what he'd be feeling, but like we knew we'd deal with it at some point. At some point, we'd have a chat and we would let those emotions out and kind of get it out. But that wasn't the time. So Skip went into a bit of an autopilot mode, which is why we worked. So he obviously organised with the organisers that we were scratching and pulling out, sorted himself out hotel room so that we didn't have to share, was bringing me food deliveries while I was locked in my room, leaving little packages outside and giving a knock and running down the corridor, and making sure it's looked after. But like, glass half full and all that, it's like he made some great contacts and friends, and it worked out. We got an adventure out in the end. But yeah, I think it's incredibly tough on him, and I think it's been tough on us both. It's been a very long 11 months getting back to where we are now.
Yeah, well, certainly your relationship would have been tested, because I think that's one of the things about this competition, and we'll start talking about 2023, because one of the things that's clear from both my conversation with Bart Svart and also with John is it's that relationship between the two members of the team which is really critical, and clearly that was a test. I'm sure you tested it in other ways previous, but I can't think of any situation more challenging than that, with all of the lead up to it. But obviously you've prepared for the Yukon 1000 on 3 separate occasions now, I guess. So what's changed? I mean, obviously you've already mentioned it changed quite a lot from your first start of when you initially started training, but how has the training changed over the last year since your disappointment in 22?
Okay, so the last 12 months, I guess, what was great about, or when you're trying to pull positives out of what happened in 2022, first and foremost, we proved that a lot of our kit selection and our processes and our planned way of doing things was on point. Our mapping was, we got an opportunity to see, our maps. You have to make your maps yourself. You have to study maps. I studied Yukon maps for 3-4 years. Made our own maps, made our own notes, and to get out there and be like, these would have been perfect. We know we've got this, so we can put that away, park it. Kind of our board selection. This is going to work. This is good. We're on the right thing here. So there's that. Then to the other side, actually, we probably had a bit too much stuff. We didn't really need this, and a lot of the feedback from the rest of the teams, is like, didn't need this. We took too much of this. So it's like, cool, okay. So let's look at how we're going to reduce our stuff. So I think it was really reassuring, to get out there, see the river, paddle on. We paddled a bit on the river after I got better. 20 km to go down the river and just get our feet wet, paddles wet, to see some of the scenery, to kind of see just how incredibly amazing and vast and remote the country is, and feel comfortable with that. So that was always a thing. You never quite know whether how you're going to deal with that. I mean, John often talks about the big green, and when we're so connected every day to everything, and online for everything. And we went last year for nearly 4 weeks without any kind of communications. Satellite phone in the bottom of the bag for emergencies, but off grid for 3-4 weeks, and bloody loved it. And like it kind of, so the reassurance. I think it's like our prep for 3-4 years is bang on point. The kit, everything, a few refinements. Training wise, I think we've been a bit of an interesting journey on the training. And, I've always trained since I was 18 for different things. I've always been in the gym. Then I would, I'm very active, but I move around things. So then I started kickboxing, then I was kite surfing, then I did the whole CrossFit stuff, and then paddleboarding after a kite surfing injury. And then paddleboarding endurance suddenly took off with this Yukon. So in the 2019, 2020, I got really into the science of training for endurance racing and really looking into that. During 2020, when my film production work was obviously almost non-existent, I did all my qualifications for personal training, sports nutrition, just because I was really interested in that side of things. And then, of course, that then influenced our training again, because I had all this more wealth of knowledge. And then it became very apparent that Skip and I are very different. And one of the things I learned is, what works for me is not going to work for everyone else. So we all have our ways of doing things. And so I think what's happened in the last 12 months is we've both really chilled out about how we train things. I think probably before last year, Skip would be looking at my Garmin stats and probably thinking, maybe I should be doing more. He's been out and done a 10-hour paddle here, then he's running here, and he's in the gym here. And then but I think we realised actually, it's a very interesting event. It's, you can don't do the race before the race.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's about being injury free, feeling fit and healthy. But that's different for everyone. Feeling fit and healthy is not going out every week, smashing out hundreds of kilometers and in the gym. You're going to burn yourself out. So I think the last year, I think we've just chilled out a lot on a lot of things and done our training our own way. We paddle together, we paddle on our own. And I think we're in good places.
Excellent. Yeah. And you don't want to go into the race overcooked, do you? And presumably you'll be going to be tapering, having a couple of burgers before you go, all of that sort of stuff to build up a bit of timber.
Simon, it feels like we've been tapering for the last 12 months, and I've been beefing up on the burgers for the last 12 months.
Excellent. Well done. Well done. I mean, I'm not a nutritionist, folks, so don't take my advice here, but nothing wrong with a bit of carb and burger loading. So just in terms of the team, I mean, the team is absolutely vital. What roles do you and Skip respectively play in the team? Have you divvied up the duties?
Yeah, so I think before the race itself, I love logistics, analytics, lists, planning. Skip's much more of a freer going type person, as you know. So it's very easy. We just left a lot of that stuff to me, which I love. So it's not a case of burdening with me, because it's what I like doing, and it's what makes me feel comfortable at the race and confident that. And then I present to Skip, here's what I've done. And he's like, yeah, happy days. He's cool. If I'm happy, he's happy. So, which is great. And that works really well. Because I think if it was two of the same people and someone else trying to do my logistics planning as well, but when it comes to the actual race itself, I mean, first and foremost, not one person should have one skill set the other one doesn't. So cross training has been really important, because there's no point in Skip knowing what to do. If I get an injury, if it's Skip that gets the injury, and vice versa. So we're kind of like, we've divvied up the kind of stuff that we probably naturally are good at doing. So like I've done all the mapping over the last 2 or 3 years. It makes sense that on the normal river paddling, I'm the one keeping an eye on the mapping and where we are. But Skip obviously will be fully aware and trained on the map, so that if I'm having a break or whatever, that he's on it. Or even just like if we need to make a decision, we both can do it collectively. It's the responsibility is not on one person. Likewise for making camp, just making sure, we've got little crib sheets. I don't want to give too many tips away, but when you've been paddling for 8 days for 18 hours and getting like 2 hours, 3 hours sleep a night, it's going to be really easy to forget stuff. I forget stuff just if I have a bad night's sleep at home. So, we've created these little crib sheets, laminated crib sheets in our PFDs of all the things we have to do when we arrive at camp and all the things we have to do when we leave camp. So like if you've got that kind of fog, that tired fog, when you're a little bit, you're a bit kind of grumpy with each other, you're tired, you're bleary eyed, it could be pouring with rain or you're getting bitten by mosquitoes or whatever. It's like you can look down and be like, okay, yeah, I've not paddled off leaving all our food still on the beach, or we've arrived at camp and I've checked for bear prints and I have tied the boards up and they're not going to float down the river. There's lots of little things. So we've created these little crib sheets. Those crib sheets, we have individual roles, but just as easily we could just cross over and cross train everything as well.
And what were your gaps? Because obviously you both got paddling background. So, apart from the fitness, obviously, you got that one dialed in. But what about your bushcraft and so on? What have you had to work on?
So Skip's had that dialed down. His background, he's an outdoor instructor, runs an outdoor adventure camp. Scouts, scout leader, or lots of. He's got that stuff dialed down. So he's been, we've done times together with each other where he's been educating me, just like basic things like building fires. We all think we love to build fires, but like learning for that. So there's a lot of just bushcraft around, I guess, how to just be sensible in environments where there's tiredness, knives, flames, wild animals, and just kind of get your mindset. So there's been a lot of that kind of cross training. We're actually doing a course in Wales about 2 weeks before the race, like a final kind of adventure bushcraft first aid course to kind of like just fill any gaps in. It's a 3-day course up there. So I think the main thing has been, and the medical, just the first aid side of things. We're both, qualified first aiders and open water lifeguard qualified stuff like that. But this is a very different type of first aid. So we've been filling those gaps in. This is not textbook and online course or lifeguard type first aid. It's a little bit more to it than that.
So a lot of this is going to be flow and water dependent, but which areas of the race do you think are going to be the most challenging, and how do you plan to manage those?
So we did a call with Bart back in 2019, actually, when we were first actually applied for. I think it's before we actually accepted our place, but we were doing a bit of due diligence, like, Jesus, what have we got ourselves in for? And I think Skip had a contact that got a hold of Bart, and Skip had a chat with Bart, and I think Bart made one comment that, if you make the lake, you make the race. So the first thing is Lake Lavage. So the lake is, you hit it on day one. It's about 30k, 20k outside of Whitehorse, and it's about 50k long. It's its own microclimate. If you're lucky, it'll be flat. You might have a little tailwind. You stick to the right hand side though. Don't go up the middle, because just as quickly as it can be sunny, you can then have 2-3 foot waves coming at you from the side. You have thunderstorms. You might need to get off the water as quick as possible. So I think the lake is the first big challenge, and it's just a slog. You've got boards loaded with lots of kit. You are going to be slogging it out. So I think the lake is challenge one. Getting there is challenge one, but and getting there without COVID is challenge two, and then getting on the river and getting across Lake Lavage. So we break it down. So Lake Lavage is the first part of the route that's going to be the challenge. After that, it gets narrow, 30-mile river. It starts getting faster again. You're back into the flow, and depending on the river levels, as the different rivers and tributaries join onto the Yukon, it picks up speed. So you can't plan. I mean, people say to me, "Oh, you've got to finish it in under 10 days. That's 100 miles a day. So what's your target each day?" And you can't. You've just got to. Again, Bart actually said this. Bart was like, "You can be on the water a maximum of 18 hours a day. Make sure you are on the water for 18 hours a day. And if you do that and just keep moving, even if you've got 18 hours of headwind one day through the flats, the river's still moving the way you're going, so you'll make progress." So I think the lake is one big one. Then obviously Five Fingers, the rapids. It is the only real sort of set of rapids on the race. It's notorious. I think probably having seen it last year, we went and looked at it from the cliffs looking down, and last year, because of the river levels, it was fast. But you're through it in 15, 20 seconds. And on a paddleboard, actually, that's probably the best thing to be on, because you can just get down to your knees, ride it out, get through the standing waves on the far side. If you go in, it's very quick and easy to get back on. When I see the guys in the canoes and kayaks, when they go in and it's upside down,
they stay in, don't they?
They stay in. So I think Five Fingers it's probably more because of its reputation. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure my heart rate will be going, tens of dozen, but I think the reputation probably precedes. There's actually another set of rapids just past there called Ring Rapids, but you can get around that by you hang a hard right, you can just miss it totally. And then you carry on from there. The White River joins, and when the White River joins, you get all the sediment. It's volcanic ash, and the river changes a lot. Then it goes from glacial water, which you could just dip a cup in and drink from, to it looks white. It looks like milk. And you can hear it on the boards. It's like a rubbing, it's like sandpaper, and everything. Your water filters, it just clogs up everything. it's not necessarily a challenge, but it changes the way you.
The conditions. Absolutely. So, and the flats, obviously, is the final stage when you're reaching that level of fatigue, you're hallucinating. I mean, I don't know whether you thought about how you deal with the fact that you see a Sasquatch out there in the forest, but
there was, the stories I've heard from speaking to people, they've seen giant beef burgers in the middle of the river. They've paddled after someone they thought was fishing. They just never got close to it. So you can't. The things you can't train for are sleep deprivation. You can't train yourself for sleep deprivation. Putting yourself through that back home thinking you're going to train yourself is not going to work, and things like hallucinations. So I think it's having an open conversation with your paddle partner as well, because you're going to hopefully go through these things at different times to each other. So you can pull each other back round or give each other a rest. Just go to your knees. Let's just put the boards together for a second. You find your time. But it'd be interesting.
Yeah, and I was hearing a story from one of the female SUP teams last year, who, by the way, mentioned you as their favourite team on the water, even though you weren't on the water. But she said that she was settling down for sleep one evening, and she was having problems sleeping anyway, and she auditory hallucinated a brass band playing next to her tent and didn't get a wink of sleep. So, I mean, it's just downright bizarre, mental. Isn't it?
Yeah, mental. Yeah.
So looking ahead, you've got this huge landmark and huge achievement ahead of you. So what are your goals and your expectations for Yukon 1000? And this has already shaped you as an individual, I guess, already. But what do you think you'll be saying that the ways in which it's shaped you when you reach that bridge?
Oh, well, that's an interesting question. So for obviously, goal one is to get it done. I say that is the goal. It is a race, but I'm trying to. Well, I think we've kind of been blinkered around. It's a race, and there's 3 other paddleboard teams, I believe, but they are not our competitors as such. They are also our safety blanket as well as we are their safety blanket. So we're out there supporting each other to do the race. We're not going out like we want to win this, or we don't. We're going to get to that bridge. That's our main goal, to get to the bridge safely. Obviously, do it within the 10-day cutoff, and enjoy it. I mean, at the time, I'm sure it's going to suck in many ways, and it's going to be great in many ways. And so know that when the times are low, the good times are coming, and when the times are good, the bad times are only around the corner. Yeah. So I think that's all we can expect from the race itself. It's amazing to know the support we've got from people back home, but also people from last year's. The people from last year's race we've known since 2019. A lot of them were accepted with us. So there's a bit of unfinished business, I think, for some other teams. There's a couple of other teams that are actually coming to see us off at Whitehorse, which is incredible. So there's a bit of responsibility on our shoulders to make sure we don't get a reason to pull out again. So I think that's the goal is to make it to the finish line, and I'm confident. We've done everything we can. We're chomping at the bit to get onto the river.
I bet you are.
Everything's ready. The kit's there. It's kind of like actually now these last few weeks are painfully slow in many ways. Once you start the journey, once you're on that plane, kind of like once you're off grid as well. It was an amazing. I can't say enough about. It's hard to explain the feeling you get when you are totally isolated and miles from anywhere, and you've not seen the news or spoke to anyone or seen any kind of social media for 3-4 weeks. It's liberating, absolutely. So I think I'm really looking forward to that again, to having that time alone with your own thoughts. As to how, well, I think it's changed us already in many ways, massively. Going back to what I said earlier, if I look at my training and prep and video clips from 2019, it's like a different person. And so I think everyone should do something that pushes you out of your comfort zone at some point. That I think it's amazing. This just proves that we have yet to do this, but the journey's been amazing. But put it this way, I think strike me down if the event got cancelled tomorrow because the river's closed or whatever. It's still been an amazing journey that we've learned so much from. So I think it's about. this sounds cheesy, but it is the journey. Not the destination necessarily. But I think the other thing that's a bit worrying is how we feel afterwards. It's been a big part for 3.5, 4 years, and it's like, and that's why I'm hoping the documentary will fill that gap a little bit.
Absolutely, it's that post-expedition blues, isn't it? So you really need to load something into that gap. And then just very finally, Craig, you had a very nice voice message from Ross Edgley. I think we all know Ross Edgley. We'll talk through who Ross Edgley is, but just tell us a bit about that message.
So there's a as part of the prep for the race, and just generally being interested in ultra endurance training and racing, and specifically because what I love about it is the older you get, the more level the playing field is. With endurance, there's so many things that you can train and get ready for that, like it levels the playing field. And so I did a lot of reading books and following people, and Mike Stroud was one person that I read a lot of. His book Survival of the Fittest is incredible. He was Sir Reynold Fine's doctor, so did the whole North-South Pole unassisted. So read his book. And Ross Edgley, obviously legend Ross Edgley, and I'm part of a few forums where he frequents, and his own training platform. I was on there, and he just asked people to leave a message about some of their challenges they're taking on. I just mentioned this one, and it obviously caught his attention, and he sent me an amazing voice message, which I'm sure you're going to play to your listeners. And it was amazing. It gave me a massive lift to hear someone like Ross talk about the challenge, go off on a tangent about his own insights and thoughts around it, and then basically offer his support was incredible.
Well, his enthusiasm definitely shines through. I mean, the man who swam around the coast of Great Britain, what an incredible character, but quite a message.
Yeah.
This is immense. I was not expecting that. 1,000-mile unsupported paddle race in the Arctic. Oh, that is... I mean, I've been up there a few times. We were in the Lofoten Islands with Disney when we were filming up there, but it is stunning, but brutal, which I know you will know. That is brilliant. Also, as well, what I love... the hybrid program as well, which was almost developed, I know, with a lot of the British rowers when I was at Loughborough University. Also Oxford, Cambridge, and then even Land Rover Bar, who have since changed to Ineos, the sailing team. That's one thing that I borrowed from them, which is that training to train. And I think the hybrid program is just going to work so well for that all-round athleticism, but more than that, work capacity. And I talk about that so much in the blueprint. For adventure, like athletic adventures like you're setting on, it's so important. I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but I love the heroic age of Antarctic exploration. And I always find with Amundsen and Robert Falcon Scott in the race to the South Pole, granted, there was so many tactical strategic errors that Robert Falcon Scott made, but one of them I always come back to was work capacity as well. Even with all of the mistakes that they made, with a higher work capacity, would they have made that final feed station? So sorry, I'm going off on a complete tangent. I do apologise. I cannot wait to see this unfold. Please post pictures and everything like that. And then also as well, if it's for charity or anything else, or just inspiring people, please let me know. And if I could share it on my social media. I always talk about this, especially with the entire Supra community. We've got some absolute specimens in here. So I'd love to share stories, if of course that's what you wanted, across my social, because I just think so many people will be interested in this. And like I said, if it's for charity, that'd be amazing. And if not, just to inspire people. So sorry, long message, but I love this one.
Big thank you to Craig, and we'll be speaking to him again in other episodes as we get closer to the start of the Yukon 1000 in Whitehorse, and of course after the race. If you wanted to follow Craig, Team Shac or other teams, then check out the show notes accompanying this episode, and please make sure that you follow SUPfm podcast on your podcast player of choice, and further information will drop into your feed as soon as they're released. And next week we're speaking to 2 out of the 4 SUP teams competing this year as we get closer to this epic challenge.